Hello to all the debt warriors listening, and welcome back to another episode of Millennial Debt Domination. I'm your host, Katie Vada. With the weather warming up and the current state of the world starting to take a turn, a lot of people are planning vacations that they might have not been able to take a year ago. You might feel the need to go on a vacation this year because you may not have gotten one last year, but don't put yourself in debt because of a vacation. There are numerous different ways to travel without breaking your bank, and on today's episode, I'll be discussing just that. Today, I'll be joined by Netanya Trimboli, the founder of Travel Influencer Expert, who has spent more than 15 years in the travel industry. Netanya loves to talk about travel because she's traveled a lot in her life. Since she's been in the travel industry for so many years and has traveled to a plethora of different places, I knew she would be a great guest to talk about traveling on a budget. Netanya and I will be discussing traveling during and post-pandemic, altering your budget for travel savings, different affordable accommodation options, and much more. Now let's get to my interview with Netanya. Hi, Netanya. Thanks for being on the podcast today.
Yes, of course. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, this year I think a lot more people are going to be traveling than last year. So I thought it'd be a great time to have a traveling on a budget podcast. So, so I guess to get started, we can kind of talk about the current situation going on. So what are some challenges people are facing with booking their vacations right now?
Yeah, well, I mean, there definitely still is some uncertainty. Like, is it okay if I do this? I recently heard the term vaxication. So if you've been vaccinated, that it's okay to travel, but I think some people are still being cautious. But ultimately, you just have to do what makes you feel comfortable. And if there's one thing that I've learned over the last year, it's that everybody has a different level of comfort. So ultimately, listen to the experts, take the precautions that you feel are necessary, and then do what's right for you.
Right. And is that kind of the same advice you would give for people to what they should be aware of for traveling during the pandemic? Just kind of know what's going on, where you're going?
Yeah, and also make sure you're looking at cancellation policies, and if there's flexibility and things like that, because there definitely was extra relaxed policies for a while. And now that there's a little bit more confidence, some of those might be changing. So just make sure that if you do think that you kind of want to play it by ear, or you're not quite sure, make sure you understand those cancellation policies.
Okay, that's a good point to point out. So with that being said, how far in advance should someone start saving for their travel plans?
Well, for me, especially if it's like a big trip, as soon as I know I want to go there is when I start saving. I don't think it ever really is too soon. But it's really important to understand how expensive the destination you're going to is. And then one thing that I like to do too, which kind of makes it seem a little bit more affordable, is I think about how much I spend on an average daily basis at home. And then I think about how much I want to spend when I'm somewhere else, and then I subtract it. So you have kind of like your delta, because you do spend money at home too. It's not, it feels like you're just hemorrhaging money on vacation, but the truth is you spend money at home too. So that kind of makes it a little bit more manageable. And you might realize, wow, I only need, an extra $50 a day to go to this place.
Right. So kind of thinking about what you spend every day when you're trying to save for your problem, what are ways people can alter their everyday budgets to include saving for a specific trip?
Well, I think that the biggest expense is the same at home as it is on vacation, and that's food and drinks. And the more you can cook yourself, the better that you'll be. And alcoholic drinks, I just, as I've gotten older, and I realize there's a lot of young people on your podcast, and it's not realistic to say stop drinking. But, even if you can do just one less drink, I mean, it just adds up so fast. And the coffee, that adds up too. So finding ways to cut down on your food and beverage expenses will really start putting money back into your savings.
Yeah, I think the coffee is a great way to start, because you could cut like that, the latte factor, they call it, cut out your coffee every morning and see how much you save. That money could literally go towards your travel.
Yeah. So,
Absolutely.
yeah. So, should someone have a separate account, maybe designated for their travel that they're saving towards?
That can be really helpful.
Hmm.
And one thing that I'm a big fan of is the automatic debit.
Okay.
So I have like every Friday, $50 will automatically go into my savings account. And you can do something as little as $5, something that you won't really notice, but over time it'll really start adding up. So yeah, that's definitely kind of a great way to just make sure that you're putting money in a special account for that.
Yeah, automatic payments are a great way to save because some you don't even think about putting it into a savings account. It just goes.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like money that you're parting with. It's just money that you never see.
Exactly, exactly. So
Hmm.
what about like a travel agent? Do you think you can use money do you think you can save money by using a travel agent?
So the one, so normally I would say no, but
Okay.
if you are a student, there's a lot of resources, and an agency like STA Travel, I'm a huge
Hmm.
fan of, because they get all these special discounts just for students, and they can kind of help you get some really great deals. So I would definitely, and I think you only have to be under 30. I don't even know if I mean,
Oh,
don't,
okay.
for certain programs that they have. So if you're under 30, I would definitely check out an organization like that and see what they have available.
Would something like that be for only big groups or like what if it was just a few people traveling?
And it's actually great for a few people traveling because
Oh,
they can
okay.
also kind of help you kind of coordinate. And granted, this was a long time ago before we
Hmm.
booked travel by the internet, but I remember when I went to Europe with friends for the first time after college, they were very helpful in saying, oh, you want to take the Eurail? This is how you buy it. This is how it's good for, and can really kind of demystify how a lot of that stuff works, and then also help you get the best deal.
That's interesting. I wrote that down because now I'm interested. So what about like a travel credit card? Do you recommend a travel credit card for someone who's looking to travel?
So, yeah. And what's really great is that first time that you open that credit card, because there are some really big incentives for the first time, especially with the airlines. You can get anywhere from 20 to 30,000 miles for opening a card and spending a certain amount in the first 3 months. So, I remember I did this, I think, when I went to Thailand. And it was enough miles. I think it only got me kind of one-way ticket there, and then I had to pay the return. But, that cut my cost in half. So I would save that, make sure you're saving your miles for
Hmm.
that big trip that's really expensive.
Right.
Don't use it to fly from New York to California. Like
Right.
use it to fly to China. Um, but yeah, that like if you need to really kind of start getting miles, that's a great way to do it. And I think that that is really great because then you're constantly just getting points, getting more miles, and that obviously airfare is a big travel cost. So it's a
Hmm.
great way to offset that.
Yeah. And if you're using a credit card, just make sure you're using it responsibly. I like to always say, make sure you're paying it off and such.
Yes, I put everything on my credit card, but I
Hmm.
pay it off 100% on a
Right.
on a weekly basis. That way it never
Oh,
gets too big. Yeah.
that's great. That's some great advice.
Yeah.
So, what are some tips on getting the best deals on flights?
So one tool that a lot of search engines have, and personally I use Kayak, they have a Fare Watcher alert button. So you can set up an alert that says, email me when this flight gets below, X number of dollars, or just when you think it's a good time to buy. So that's really helpful because that way you don't have to kind of like, check in every day to see how it's doing.
Mhm.
As a general rule of thumb, though, the best flights are either the cheapest flights are usually either like really far out, like 4 to 6 months out, or 4 to 6 weeks before your flight. So when you're in that 2 to 3 month before, that's when they're usually kind of expensive. um, but you also have to factor in, like, am I traveling at peak season? If so, grab that flight early because they know supply and demand. But if you think that, all right, nobody else is going to be flying to Chicago in February, I'm just going to wait till a couple of weeks before and I'm sure I'll
Mhm.
get a good deal.
Oh, that's good
um,
advice.
so you kind of have to, put on the airline's hat and kind of try to think what their availability is going to look like.
So you kind of like mentioned checking in on a flight every day situation. Does that actually hurt like the price? I heard if you keep checking all the time, sometimes it makes the price go up. Is that true?
I've heard that anecdotally too, and it might be, you can always do a test and open an incognito window if you think that
Oh,
you're
okay.
thinking too much or like clear your cache and try again.
Oh,
But
okay.
I can neither confirm nor deny that is actually the case.
If you have a feeling, maybe you could try that incognito window and then look on there, look like that anyway, just in case.
Yeah, definitely.
So, yeah. What about we kind of like little touched on this a little bit. Are there different times of year that are better to travel if you're looking to save money? I guess like off-peak seasons and such.
Yeah, so obviously peak season is going to be the most expensive.
Right.
Shoulder season is usually a good time to go because you're still getting, if weather is kind of what makes it more desirable one time or the other. In shoulder season, you still might get little bits of that good weather. Um, but what's interesting is, you might like kind of think, oh, don't travel on a holiday. Well,
Mhm.
interestingly, a long time ago, I went with my now husband to Italy in Rome on Easter, thinking that would be
Oh.
like so busy and just crazy and wow, Vatican, Easter. It was dead. There was
Oh.
nobody there, which
Hmm.
was really cool on one hand because we didn't have the crowds, but on the other, everything was closed. So
Okay.
so don't just assume that because it's a holiday, it's going to be a busy time. You really need to think about the culture of that place, how they celebrate. Um, so keep in mind holidays, but that's not the end all be all. Another busy time is spring break, which before
Oh.
I had kids, I totally didn't get that. I'm like, I'm not in college. Who cares about spring break? It's not like a thing. But yeah, it's like parents and their kids, school's closed. So that spring break window can be kind of crazy.
Yeah. And summer, I'm assuming too, is a crazy time to travel still.
Yeah. But like, after spring break, before summer, like that kind of April, May, like right
That's
now,
good.
it's
Uh-huh.
a really good time because you have that nice weather, but school's not out.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. So, what are different types of discounts available for certain groups of people looking to travel?
I mentioned students. You can
Hmm.
get so many discounts if you're a student.
Right.
And then, beyond that, military gets really good discounts.
Hmm.
Old people get good discounts.
Hmm.
Um, there's certain, I'm always a little skeptical of like these kind of clubs or companies that offer discounts. I usually find them to be kind of like fake me out deals. I think just with the internet and just so many deals out there, you can just if you do the research, you'll get those deals yourself. So if you don't fall into a particular group, I wouldn't worry so much about it. Like there are deals out there if you're looking for them.
Right. So, what are different types of cost-effective accommodation options?
Sure. So there are so many. So first are hostels, which are really fun, especially if you're young. It's kind of like college mixed with vacation. You share a dorm room. There's a kitchen. They have activities, and it's a great way to meet people. And it's really affordable, kind of no frills type of place. And really, for me, low cost accommodation comes down to the kitchen factor. As I mentioned before, cooking your own meals is the best way to save money when you travel.
Hmm.
So I would look for that first and foremost. So definitely hostels. Another one is couch surfing, which I've never personally tried, but I know people who have and they love it. And that I believe is actually free. But you're staying with someone you've never met before in either their couch or their spare bedroom and just kind of hoping for the best.
Right.
Um, but something else that I isn't really given as much attention is just your friend circle. So one of the best trips that I ever took was I spent a month going across the U.S. just staying with friends. After college, people just dispersed, and I just people were living in different states, and I just made a trip out of visiting all my friends.
Hmm.
So I got to stay there for free. It was fun to see them. They were appreciative that I came to visit them. And another thing you can do is, if you're going somewhere and you don't know anybody, put it out to your friend network. Hey, I'm going to Italy. Does anybody have anyone who lives there that I could crash with? You'd be surprised who kind of comes back with that. Someone just might have moved there and wants a new friend, or maybe they just love being a host. So kind of putting it out to your community and seeing who you can stay with.
Hmm.
Um, and then, there's still always deals to be had on Airbnb, or if you want a hotel, I love Oh, I'm blanking on it. Not Hotwire. But there's one of the ones where it doesn't tell you what it is until you book it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, maybe it's
Uh,
Hotwire. You know, I've gotten really good deals staying at
mhm.
places doing that. But if you really are looking for the budget, look for places with that kitchen or
Right.
places that include breakfast or free coffee, things like
Okay.
that.
Yeah, that's a good point to point out. So if you're looking to travel we kind of talked about that actually a little bit, but if you're looking to travel internationally, what kind of accommodation options are there that provide the best deals? We kind of touched on this a little bit, but there anything else?
Yeah, so the hostels in Europe are
Mhm.
actually really nice, especially if you do your research. And all hostels are not created equal. And I think
Okay.
that people might have had a bad experience and they just write them all off. But
Right.
that's like having a bad experience at one hotel and writing off hotels.
Hmm.
So really read the reviews. You know, to one person, a party hostel might be a good thing, and to somebody else, that might be their worst nightmare.
Right.
So make sure you're reading the reviews, understanding what they offer, and then also seeing what the cost includes, because some of them include, you know, breakfast and coffee and activities, and others it's just your bed, and then you have to pay for your locker and you have to pay for your sheets. And so
Hmm.
make sure you're understanding what that gets you. But personally, if you're young, if you're traveling with friends or by yourself, I do think that hostels are the best way to stay internationally.
Hmm.
um, and kind of on that note too, when I was younger and I wanted to travel for an extended period of time, I would pick my destination based on how far my money would go. Um, you know, like in Costa Rica, you can stay in a pretty nice hostel for $5 a night. And so I was living like a king there. And same for Thailand, you know, you can
Right.
get like a pad thai dinner for 25 cents. So, but by being really thoughtful about picking a destination where your money will go far, that'll also give you more options. If, okay, I'm done with hostels, I just need a hotel, you know, you can spend the $30 to stay in a
Mhm.
hotel.
Yeah, definitely do your research, it sounds like, and
Yeah.
definitely read reviews. I think with any kind of accommodation, you should for sure read the reviews. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, and you know, something else I
Hmm.
wanted to mention too,
Yeah.
for extended travel, an organization that I love is called Volunteers for Peace, and it's vfp.org. And a lot of times, volunteer experiences can actually be crazy expensive for whatever reason. But this one, it's a very small nominal fee. And they have so many different projects that you can do for anywhere from like 1 week to 6 weeks. And you get to stay there, they feed you, and then you do kind of something meaningful. So, I mean, I stayed on an island in France for 3 weeks for $300, and I didn't pay for anything while I was there.
Uh,
So, if you kind of want to have that really kind of long-term experience, doing that or even study abroad can often be cheaper than if you were
mhm.
to stay at home.
Yeah,
So,
for sure.
I would look into those type of experiences as well.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to put the link for that in the description of this podcast. That sounds like it'll be something great for millennials and Gen Zers because they're a little bit younger. So that may even be a great opportunity for them.
Yeah, it's a great way to meet people and just
Hmm.
really kind of get to know a culture.
Yeah. Well, that sounds awesome. I'm going to put that in the script, the link to that in the description of this podcast.
Oh, great.
Yeah. So, what are some alternative vacations that don't involve flying on a plane? Sorry.
So do you mean domestically then?
Yeah.
So there's so many different types of trips that you can do. Obviously, the road trip is really popular right now.
Right. Uh-huh.
But you know, I live in Northern Virginia, and what I love about the East Coast is basically every 2 hours you're in a
Yeah.
completely different state, completely different vibe, and you can see so much in a short distance. So if you wanted to take the bus from Boston down to DC, you can hit New
Hmm.
York and Philadelphia, Baltimore, New Jersey. You know, you can kind of get a whole bunch of different experiences, just either in a car, bus, train, whatever. Um, and the West Coast, if you've never done the Pacific Coast Highway, it really is as spectacular as the hype. And that's a really beautiful road trip. Um, and, you know, I recommend just kind of like looking at a map and just seeing what cool cities are clustered together, like New Orleans and Nashville,
Right.
you know, and then Austin's not too far, and just really kind of trying to kind of hit a cluster. Um, But yeah, there's so many different road trips you can take. There's also a lot of different camping options. And a lot of times when you think of camping, you might just think of kind of the tent and like roughing it.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of campgrounds that have pools and, movie night and all sorts of different activities that make it really kind of like camp-like. And you can stay in a bare bones cabin. You can stay in a nice cabin. So there's all kinds of different experiences that you can have under that camping genre as well.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of places in the US, no matter where you live, you only have to drive a certain amount of hours and you can get to a major city, somewhere you haven't been. So there are a lot of places in the US that are that you could travel without having to go on a plane. So we definitely have
Yeah,
some good options.
absolutely.
Definitely here on the East Coast too. You have some great options. So
Mhm.
yeah. So how can you save money during your vacation, like on food or tickets or something of that nature?
Yeah, so again, I can't say enough food. That is the
Yeah.
biggest killer. And one thing that I do too is I cram as many snacks into my bag as I
Oh, okay.
can. So
Yeah.
that way I already have those when I get there.
Right.
Um, but yeah, saving on food and drinks is a great way to do that. And then, you know, um, you have to kind of do your research before you get there too, and figure out where are the tourist traps, where is going to charge you too much for, fill in the blank, and find out what is the average price for a tour of, whatever. So that way you kind of you're not coming into it blind, and you can know what a good deal is when you find it.
Right. And maybe once again, do your research before. Don't necessarily go with the major mainstream thing. There might be another thing offering the same experience you're looking to do, but for a cheaper price.
Yeah, absolutely. And then also know what you're willing to splurge on and what you're not. So there
Right.
might be just like a really cool thing that, somewhere's known for, like, in Switzerland, in Interlaken, it was paragliding, where you jump off a mountain with a parachute on. It's like the most amazing experience of your life. I was willing to pay like 100 whatever dollars for that because I was never going to have that experience again
Hmm.
anywhere else. But for just like a walking tour of the city, like I'm not going to pay $50 for that.
Right.
So
Right.
kind of think ahead what you want to splurge on and what's going to be worth it. And then the other stuff that you can, a lot of times there'll be kind of a do-it-yourself option where maybe there's something that you can listen to on your headphones and walk around the city and get a similar experience. Or maybe, you rent your own bike instead of taking a bike tour. So kind of play around with that and just, prioritize where you want to spend your money.
Right. I would even say like a give and take, like maybe don't get souvenirs or maybe not as fancy meals, but you could maybe then stay an extra day where you are, something like that too.
Yeah, absolutely. And
So,
there's so many travel influencers out there,
mhm.
and one of like the favorite topics is free things to do in X. So
Right.
if you kind of search for that, you'll find a lot of free or low cost activities to do in whatever destination you're going to.
Oh, I'm sure there's so many, especially with Instagram and stuff nowadays. And YouTube, there's so many on YouTube you can
Yeah.
find too for anywhere.
And like New York City is a great example. I mean, you really don't have to spend a dollar if you don't want to, and you
Yep.
can have such an amazing experience there.
Hmm. Yeah, you definitely can. That's a great example.
Mhm.
So do you have any other great budget travel tips that we didn't touch on today?
Um, I think I covered it all. I think for
Hmm.
me, the biggest thing is planning your destination smartly. Maybe you've always wanted to go to London and that's a bucket list destination. Well, that might not be the best place for you to go right now if you don't have as much money. And so think of destinations you can go to that are safe, but that your money will go far. It'll be much more enjoyable, and you won't be stressed about spending money.
Hmm.
Um, and then I touched on it a little bit, but study abroad, if you really want that long-term travel, really look into that because you're paying a cost for college already. And most likely, an American college is going to be way more expensive than a destination abroad. And you pay that destination's price, not the American price. So you could actually save money by doing study abroad. Um, so that's another great one. Um, and then, yeah, I think that pretty much sums it up. And, for me personally, I've always found these long-term travel that I did was actually cheaper than staying at home, because I was able to find these opportunities that were kind of a low-cost way to get in the door. And then when you're there, your expenses are taken care of for you. So travel does not by any means have to be expensive. And I truly believe it is for everybody. And actually, there is one more thing. There are travel scholarships available. Like, whoever knew that that was such a thing? But there's actually hundreds of them. So do a search for it and see if you qualify for any of them. And, you can apply.
That's definitely some great advice. Well, you definitely answered everything we need to know about travel today. So thank you for all your tips and advice. Yeah, thanks for taking time to talk to me today on the podcast.
Absolutely. It's one of my favorite topics. So happy to do it.
Yeah. So thanks again for being here, Netanya. I had a great time talking to you.
All right. Thank you.
That discussion with Netanya seriously made me want to take a vacation. I really enjoyed Netanya's different perspective on traveling. When you know you want to go on a vacation, start saving immediately and automate those savings. Those automatic savings will start to add up and your vacation savings will grow quickly. If you have the ability to open a travel credit card, do so if you're looking to travel long distance on a plane. Save all of your points for a big trip that you're planning. As always, make sure you're paying off your credit card in full at the end of the month. Netanya noted a lot of great ways students can travel for a great price. So I'm going to add some of the different organizations Netanya suggested for student travel in the description of this podcast. Netanya emphasized a great way to save while on your vacation is to cook your own meals. A lot of travel destinations charge higher than usual prices for food at restaurants, so having the ability to cook your own meals can cut your cost way down. You definitely want to research your intended travel destination extensively before you book anything. Make sure to read reviews from verified guests as well. I'll also link Netanya's website in the description of this podcast, so if you have any other travel-related questions we didn't get to today, you can check out her website and reach out to her through there. With that being said, that wraps up another episode of Millennial Debt Domination. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast wherever you're listening, and if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, please rate and review us there. I'll talk to you next time, Millennials, Gen Zers, and everyone else listening. Bye.